Right. This is Counterplan lecture attempt number like 5. All right. What's a counterplan? Hi.
Hi. It's something the neg reads that is competitive to the affirmative.
Okay, well, you're getting a little far ahead of yourself.
I hate
It's
you. I hate you.
It's an alternative proposal. It is an example. The AF reads UBI and says it would reduce poverty. The neg reads a counterplan to ban nuclear weapons and says it would prevent nuclear war. Without thinking about any of the stuff you know about counterplans, which proposal is better?
Neg.
The neg. It solves for more stuff. But gut check, is the neg a reason not to do the AF?
Nope.
Why not?
Well, I want to reduce poverty and prevent nuclear war.
Okay, you want to. Can you?
Yeah.
Yeah. So is there a trade-off between these two options?
No.
Great. So the thing that went wrong here is that the neg reads an uncompetitive counterplan, which means that the counterplan does not present a genuine opportunity cost to the AF. Gage, what's an opportunity cost?
Opportunity cost is a trade-off between the AF and the counterplan.
Yeah, it's some benefit or some world that we cannot access once we've done the affirmative. All right. The counterplan in this case is not a reason not to do the AF because there's no trade-off. We can do both. So competition is, I want y'all to think about this as a counterplan is competitive if it presents an opportunity cost to the AF. If there is something that it forces us to pick between. A counterplan wins if doing just the counterplan is the best course of action. Doing the AF means that you can't be doing the best course of action. This is the win condition for a counterplan. A counterplan can be competitive without immediately winning. But if you are doing the AF, then that means that you can't be doing the best course of action, assuming that the counterplan is the best course of action. So this is what you want to prove as a neg debater in a competition debate, which is that doing the AF, any world that includes the AF is worse than the one with just the counterplan. Now, the way we achieve this is through net benefits and mutual exclusivity. All right, y'all better be great for answering this stuff. What are the two types of net benefits, Avery?
Internal and external.
Ty, what's an internal net benefit?
An internal net benefit is something good that the counterplan causes.
Yeah.
I like this guy.
All right.
Maybe.
So net benefits are reasons that the counterplan is better than the AF. If we take the counterplan world and we subtract it from the AF world, net benefits are whatever's left that are good. So internal net benefits are direct results of doing the counterplan. So for example, if on last year's topic, the policy topic, we had the Supreme Court ruled that people are constitutionally entitled to receive the universal basic income. And we say that constitutionalizing this doctrine of economic rights is good and something we ought to do. That is an internal net benefit of the process counterplan, because the counterplan does something that is good, that the AF does not accomplish on its own. So the counterplan might have better solvency. That's an internal net benefit. Or maybe with an agent counterplan, it increases that agency's legitimacy. So like if you use the patent trade office counterplan, that might be an internal net benefit, is that it strengthens the PTO. External net benefits. Gage, I already asked you that. Avery, what's an external net benefit?
The external net benefit is time.
What's an external net benefit, Ty?
To answer your question.
It's by doing the plan, you're causing something bad to happen.
Yes.
That the counterplan avoids.
It's a disadd to the plan that the counterplan avoids. So with our UBI example we went through, a UBI is inflationary. An external net benefit to the provide people free housing counterplan is that it is not inflationary, maybe, and that the counterplan, the disadd, is the net benefit. So this inflation disadd to the universal basic income is our net benefit. External net benefits are better at making counterplans competitive. This is generally because an external net benefit happens the moment you do the AF, regardless of what counterplans you tack onto it. So that means that any world that contains the AF also contains the disadd. So that choice between a world with the disad and a world without the disad is what makes the counterplan competitive. If you can prove that the counterplan solves the AF and then win this external net benefit, you're in a very good place as the neg to win the round. So the counterplan is competitive if the perm doesn't access the internal or external net benefit, because now this internal or external net benefit is an opportunity cost to the affirmative. It is an opportunity. We pass up the opportunity to get the internal or the external net benefit the moment we do the affirmative.
Yes.
I agree.
So, did we talk about it? Mutual exclusivity? Essentially means that the counterplan and the AF cannot coexist. If the AF is to collaborate with NATO in cybersecurity and the counterplan is to abolish NATO, these probably can't be done together. They might be able to be done in sequence. We'll talk about that later. But they are mutually exclusive because doing both at the same time is not possible. Permutations. What is a permutation? Tie.
It's a test of competition.
All right. Nothing more, nothing less. A perm is a test of competition. For now, we're not going to talk about advocating perms. You don't get to do that.
But there is something that exists with
What
that.
is that?
So if somebody kicks a counterplan and then goes for the external net benefit, or and you think that the perm solves the external net benefit, you might try to advocate the perm, which is where you say, here is a world that contains the AF and does not trigger the net benefit, and it is the world of the perm. We're going to advocate this perm because we can't test for competition anymore because they kicked the counterplan. But you're still going to try to use it to prove that there's a world where we do the AF that does not incur the cost of the external net benefit. This is equivalent to an intrinsicness test, which is something we'll talk about later. If anybody's watching on YouTube, I would encourage you to Google Rehabilitating Intrinsicness Redux, Anthony Trufanov. It's a fantastic blog. It's great. I think we'll do a lecture on intrinsicness later because I'm in a hack for it. Okay. So the perm asks this question, can we do both and still get the benefits of the AF and the counterplan? Or more basically, a perm is a test of whether the AF is contained within the best course of action. So perms succeed if they prove that doing the AF and any part of the counterplan is better than doing just the counterplan. In other words, a perm succeeds if it proves that the best course of action contains doing the AF. So the structure of a permutation, a perm includes all of the affirmative. If it excludes part of the AF, that is severance, which is bad. If we sever part of our AF, then the perm is not forwarding a world that contains the AF. So even if the perm is the best world, it is not a world that contains the AF, so it is not a reason to vote AF. A perm includes some or all of the counterplan. Sometimes counterplans may have an artificial plank that spans the plan, and that is something that you would remove when you do a perm. Maybe they have a bunch of planks, and you don't want to be stuck in this one option of perm do all the counterplan planks and the AF. So you perm a bunch of different combinations. So there's a number of ways you can do that. Types of perms. Perm do both. You do all of the AF and some or all of the counterplan at the same time. With our nuclear weapons counterplan, this is the easy one. Just perm do both. There's no reason that we can't do both at the same time. Perm do the AF, then the counterplan. Let's say on the NATO versus abolish NATO debate, maybe the AF is to fix up satellite cybersecurity. And that's kind of a one-time thing. So we can do all of the AF first, and then we do some or all of the counterplan. So we achieve this, fix up satellite cybersecurity, and then we abolish NATO. This is to some degree textual severance, depending on how we define the word increase. But we'll talk about that in a bit. No, we didn't actually. Perm do the counterplan. This is a funny one. You run this if the counterplan is an instance of the affirmative plan text, or if part of it is an instance of the affirmative plan text. So that is to say, if I have the living wage topic in LD, and then somebody reads the basic income counterplan, and I redefine living wage as including basic income proposals, then the plan text, the US should require that workers receive a living wage. And the plan text, the US should provide workers with a basic income. The second is just an instance of the first. The first is an umbrella that includes maybe requiring that corporations pay the minimum wage or that the federal government do it. So if the counterplan is an instance of the affirmative, then you would read this. Or if it includes the entirety of the affirmative. So if it is, quote, plan plus is the phrase there. If it does the F and then does something else too, then that would be an instance where perm do the counterplan works. And there's a bunch of others. Answering the permutation. So as the negative, your job when reading a counterplan is to prove that the best world is just the counterplan. So when you're answering permutations, you need to find any reason why they are worse than just doing the counterplan. So if the perm doesn't access an impact or the F for the counterplan, you might just say perm fails, it can't solve X. Or if the perm links to the external net benefit, it still triggers the disadvantage. This is a big one, especially with advantage counterplans and PICs, which we're going to talk about in a second. These are big. So if it still triggers whatever disadd is your external net benefit, then you have answered the perm because the counterplan, which presumably solves the F, avoids the net benefit and is thus better. So the perm is severance. That would mean that the perm has not done all of the affirmative. It has cut out a part of the F, which just means that it has not met its burden as a permutation, which is to prove that the best world contains the F. Because if you're severing, you're not forwarding a world with the F in it. Part of the F is not the F. Perm is intrinsic. These are sometimes legitimate, most of the time not. But these are perms that add something that isn't part of the F or the counterplan. People have disagreements with this because it can kind of shift the focus of the debate if we're able to add additional stuff that neither side proposed in a permutation. It makes it very difficult to be neg. Sure, if the F is UBI and the counterplan is housing, then an intrinsic perm would be UBI, housing, and Medicare for all. That is another thing that you threw in there. Maybe you would do that to avoid some disadvantage, or maybe it's UBI, housing, and the Fed should increase interest rates to solve like an external net benefit of inflation. That is shifting the goalpost that the neg has to overcome. So that makes it difficult to be neg. An example, the F says, let's go to a basketball game, sorry. Those are only 2 letters apart. The advantage is that we'd have fun. The neg says, let's go eat food. It has 2 advantages it solves for. We'd have fun and we won't be hungry. What's hunger?
Bad.
Sure. In debate terminology, what is it? What is it functioning at? A disadvantage, which in the counterplan context is?
An external net benefit.
It is an external net benefit because when we go to the basketball game, we become hungry.
Oh, no.
But eating food avoids that. This is also in some sense an internal net benefit because maybe we're going to be hungry if we don't do anything. So yeah, this is actually an internal net benefit because hunger will happen regardless. And the counterplan just happens to solve for that.
Okay.
All right. Who is winning right now? Assuming there no perms have happened. These are just our 2 proposals we're picking from.
Neg.
Net.
Neg is winning. They solve the advantage and they solve this additional internal net benefit of not being hungry. How could the F permute this?
Let's go to the basketball game and then go eat food.
So what would that be in debate terminology?
So that would be perm, do the F, and then the counterplan.
Okay. Yeah. Perm do both. This one might be intrinsic. Let's go get food at the basketball game. Let's say that the counterplan is actually, let's go to Chick-fil-A. And then the app is like, let's get food at the basketball game. What kind of perm is that?
Severance.
No, they're doing they're going to the basketball game, which is the F. So they do the whole F. It's intrinsic because presumably they're not going to the basketball Chick-fil-A. So it's adding this go to the basketball food court or concession stand, which is not a part of the AF or the counterplan. But if it's just get food, then get food at the basketball game is a perfectly valid perm. Perm do the AF, then the counterplan, go to a basketball game, and then get food on the way back. You are going to run multiple perms at once. Perms are conditional. You can kick them. They are not advocacies. They are just tests of competition. You can test competition as many times as you want. You can provide as many different attempts at combining the AF and the counterplan to prove that one of them is the best option. So the neg is going to answer these perms. They're going to say that the perm do both fails. It doesn't solve fun because the food at the basketball game is icky, and then we're having less fun. Honestly, I should not have written this as perm do both fails. That is a disadd to the permutation. The disadd is that we ate icky food. Let's say the concession stand has a tendency to give people salmonella.
Ah,
This is a disadd to the permutation, which is a thing you can do. It's a different way of achieving competition, is that uniquely combining the two options will produce a bad result, even if it may be possible. So if combining the two results in us getting salmonella, that's a disadd to the perm. The perm do the AF, then the counterplan fails. So this is kind of saying that they're mutually exclusive, that the restaurants are all going to be closed. So in the time that it takes you to go to the basketball game, you are losing the opportunity to get food. Oh, which perm is doing worse right now? Ignore the salmonella bit. Which of these perms? Which of these perms is currently the better option for the AF?
perm do both
Perm
fails.
do both, right? Because they still get the fun, they still get the less hungry, and they still get the basketball game. So hopefully they can win on this. So if the perm do both is still more fun than just getting food, who's winning?
Ah,
AF. Why?
because perm do both is a world where the AF exists
Yeah.
in its entirety.
Because the best option includes going to a basketball game. So the AF is winning. Overall, counterplans are an opportunity cost to the AF. They have to be competitive, which means the counterplan must be the best course of action in order to win. Perms are a way to test competition. And now is part 2. Types of counterplans, and a little bit more on perm debating, and then a little bit more on competition. This is the bit where it gets a little more complicated. We're also going to talk about answering counterplans in here. This is a fun little acronym. Stop! This is ways you can beat a permutation. Solvency, the counterplan doesn't solve case. Theory, you're not allowed to do that. Offense, disadd to the counterplan. Permutation, do both. All right.
No,
Wait,
go
wait,
back.
Fair enough.
So theory is like,
We're about to get into that.
okay.
We're going to say that the counterplan is a bad thing that you shouldn't be allowed to advocate. There's a lot of reasons that some counterplans might be that.
Condo.
Conditionality.
How did that get in here? Where does this say condo?
What is it? I'm just asking.
Conditionality is the negative's ability to to kick out of advocacies. So advocacies are generally critiques and counterplans, or alternatives and counterplans. Conditionality is the neg's is allowing the neg to say, all right, we'll concede this and we're not going to advocate for the counterplan. So that means that they can forward multiple worlds, but they don't have to go for any of them. So they can stop advocating for them whenever they want.
Okay.
That we'll have a theory lecture. We'll go into things like Pondo and spec. There's a lot of theory stuff, but most of it's useless.
Okay.
All right, theory. this is one way that you're going to answer a counterplan. You're going to give a reason why it is bad that somebody would read that counterplan. So theory in general is the process of debating about where we set the rules for debate. This is commonly, what do you mean against pigs? This is commonly used against particular kinds of plan-inclusive counterplans, specifically process counterplans. It is also used against counterplans that use international fiat or other sorts of illegitimate arguments. So broadly, counterplans can be organized into ones that include the AF or result in it, and ones that do not. So these are, I'm going to start with the ones that don't include or result in the AF. The simplest type is an advantage counterplan. It is an alternative proposal that attempts to solve an advantage or multiple of the plan without doing the plan. So in the living wage example, the earned income tax credit is an advantage counterplan. On the basic income example, the housing counterplan is an advantage counterplan because it solves for poverty or the economy. So in this case, eating food is an advantage counterplan because it solves the fun advantage of going to a basketball game. And it has this internal net benefit of avoiding hunger. All right. Solvency is the big way you're going to beat advantage counterplans. Solvency and perms. Actually, all of these except theory. Advantage counterplans that don't use international actors or utopian fiat kinds of things are almost always theoretically just fine. So there's no reason why you shouldn't be allowed to read the earned income tax credit counterplan. It's not abusive in any sort of way. So solvency, you're going to say that the housing counterplan, for example, doesn't solve poverty as well as a basic income does. You're going to say that the housing counterplan results in really bad homes that collapse on people and kill a bunch of people. And you're going to say, perm do both. We can do both the basic income and the housing counterplan. So,
Right, but you're not going to say that the housing collapses in on people if you do perm do both, right?
you are, though, because a perm is not an advocacy. It is just a test of competition.
Stop looking at me like
So
that. Sorry.
you can read, and you should read, a dissad to a counterplan and also permutations. Because remember, you are not advocating for the permutation. You are not saying that we should do the permutation. You are saying that we can combine the AF and the counterplan, and that will necessarily be a better world than the counterplan. Even if you think just the AF is better than the perm, you still will put forward a perm just in case they get a lot of offense on the counterplan.
Okay.
So what you're saying there is you can almost think of it as a backup. Like if you lose this housing collapse argument, you can still advocate. I should not use the word advocate. There is still a world where we do both the AF and the counterplan. And it is necessarily better than just doing the counterplan. Another form of not pick is a little bit more complicated. It is the uniqueness counterplan. These are weird, but bear with me for a moment. So these fiat in uniqueness for a disadvantage. I'm going to give an example. It's kind of stupid, but if the AF plan is to play soccer and the neg reads a dissad to exercise, it says that any exercise will blow up the universe. What's the issue here?
It won't.
If we buy that any exercise will blow up the universe, what's the issue? What happens when my neighbor goes for a run tomorrow at 3 a.m.?
People are still exercising.
People are still exercising. What's this idea of if this universe exercise bad dissad? What's its issue? Avery?
It's already happening
Meaning?
in the status quo.
Meaning? In debate terms?
That means, like, it's going to happen either way.
Debate terms.
I'm gonna need Fortnite terms.
It happens in
The debate term that I'm looking for is on this slide.
It's unique.
It's not unique.
It's not unique.
Right? So it happens in the status quo and the counterplan world. What's the problem? It's non-unique. So the neg will read this uniqueness counterplan, which is that we ban exercise. So that means that only the world where we do the AF will result in the disad. People do these. Honestly, I see them most often in politics debates. So
Good thing.
It-
You're not them.
let's leave uniqueness counterplans for now. Now the universal annihilation happens is unique to the AF world and not the counterplan world. Stop solvency. In this example, what's an issue with the solvency?
What? What?
Is banning exercise going to work?
No.
There you go. Doesn't solve. Offense. Is exercise actually bad?
No.
No. So there's a big disad to the ban exercise counterplan, which is that people start dying of heart disease more.
No.
The perm probably doesn't work. We can't really ban exercise and do the soccer plan. But maybe if like the AF plan isn't enough to trigger the disad and the counterplan gets the rest of it, we can be like perm, do the AF, ban the rest of exercise, and we'll be fine.
Okay.
Theory, these are just going to be the same kinds of objections as you might have to an advantage counterplan if they use international, utopian, mindset, object fiat. Those are the kinds of things you're going to critique. International fiat is fiating an international actor like the United Nations or England or the International Criminal Court. These are all international actors that arguably the neg shouldn't have access to. Or maybe they object fiat is complicated. It is where you are fiating directly the object of the plan.
I need
Those
a
are
definition of
complicated.
fiat. Can you give me a definition of fiat? Like,
So the term fiat is Latin for let it be done.
Okay.
It is this thing we do in debate where we create worlds. When you say the United States federal government should do something, you are invoking fiat. And essentially, it is our ability to imagine what happens when we do something. That is fiat. So, and it's things that we can fiat. We create these worlds. We imagine what happens. So we fiat them. Things that and then we now have this world as a world in the debate.
Okay.
Things that we shouldn't be allowed to fiat, you don't get the ability to make that world for whatever reason, and you can't use that world to win a debate. So I probably can't fiat that Vladimir Putin stops invading Ukraine.
no.
So I could imagine that world, but like that's not a thing that I have this like fiat jurisdiction over. And I can't be like counterplan instead of the US like preventing the war itself, have Putin just stop, because I can't do that and I'm not allowed. That kind of fiat is illegitimate because it is object fiat. If the object, let's say the AF is to send more weapons to Ukraine so we stop the war.
Yeah.
Then an example of object fiat and also of international fiat and also maybe of mindset fiat would be to fiat that Putin has a change of heart and withdraws his troops from Ukraine.
Okay, so
It is
two different
fiating-
worlds.
Yeah. So now this is a great example of object fiat. So just give me a sec. When we fiat that Putin ends the war in Ukraine himself, we are just directly fiating the goal or the object of the affirmative in a way that is illegitimate. Hi. So you're fiating past this structural barrier to preventing the war in Ukraine, which is that Russia wants the war in Ukraine, and you can't just fiat that away. That's object fiat. It's also international fiat. You can't fiat what Russia does. It is also mindset fiat. You can't fiat what Putin feels. The things that you do get to kind of fiat are US policymaking bodies. The ones that are the most clear-cut are executive and congressional branch agencies. It's a little bit more unclear whether courts fiat is valid, because can you fiat that Amy Coney Barrett has a change of heart and votes in one way or another? Maybe, maybe not. Is the court a policy-making institution that we ought to be able to argue about what it's doing? Maybe, maybe not. Anyway, I personally don't think that courts fiat is valid. I think this is policy debate, not amicus curiae debate. But it's a debate to be had. Anyway.
It's LD.
Loser division.
I'm in LD, not policy.
Guess where the best LDers go to camp? Policy camp. Picks. This is the traditional vanilla pick. Exclude a part of the plan and do the rest of it. Agent counterplans. Have somebody else do the plan. Process counterplans. Change the process by which the plan is enacted.
Wait, can you go
Go
back?
back.
Okay, fair enough.
It's gonna be a
Where are we
second.
going here?
Did anyone else join?
No,
That's lame.
I agree.
Wait, is there anyone in the Google Meet right now?
No, it's just useful to record it. So
So when we refer to the plan, is it the app or is it the completely different plan that we have? So we.
when I say the plan, I am talking about the AF plan. The
Okay.
plan text that the affirmative reads.
So then that's why it's called a pick. You're picking out like one specific. Okay, I get it. I get it. Do you see me getting it? Do you see my brain working? Do you see my brain getting it?
I'm very
Because
proud
I'm
of you.
getting it.
Okay.
So process counterplans and these agent and actor counterplans, these are all examples of picks.
In a sense, you generally wouldn't call a processor an agent counterplan a pick, but it is a plan inclusive counterplan because it results in the plan action.
Okay.
Vanilla picks. This is a plan inclusive counterplan, except that it's actually excluding part of the plan. This is what you would call a pick. The plan does a lot of things. You pick out of, this is what you will say, one of them, and then you're going to read a disadd to it. These are generally theoretically legitimate because the AF wrote a plan. They decided what parts of it they were going to include, and then they can garner advantage ground off of these parts. So you should be allowed to say one of those parts is bad. We're going to advocate for doing the rest, though.
Okay.
So yeah, the AF can have advantages based on all the things they do, and plan planks should be reasonably related. Like there should be reasons why they're all there together. If you do a tiny little pick, these are more questionable. So why might a tiny little pick be bad?
You dodge the core topic controversy.
What does that mean?
You basically dodge the overall effects that the resolution would have.
Sort of. Let's say it's this aviation AF that you're reading to strengthen patents and innovation.
So
And I read a pick to strengthen patents in everything except aviation tire rubber materials. And then I read a huge disadd to aviation tire rubber materials. Or I read a tiny disadd to aviation tire rubber materials patents. And I say, it's just a little bit worse than had we not done it. Are we debating about strengthening intellectual property rights anymore? Or are we debating about rubber plants?
rubber
Rubber
plants.
Rubber plants.
We're debating about rubber plants. So you are dodging the core topic controversy of whether we should be strengthening IPR. These are almost always competitive due to mutual exclusivity. You can't both do the AF and exclude part of the AF. Solvency. How would you answer a pick with solvency?
You don't get all the benefits from the app if you just do part of the app.
Yeah, that part that you picked out of is pretty important. We need it. Theory, maybe try it if it's like big on the count. On last year's topic was the KKK pick, which is if they like give a universal basic income, you'd say UBI to everybody except members of the Ku Klux Klan. You can maybe find some theoretical objections to that.
That sounds like it sucks to argue yet.
Yeah, you just go for theory.
Okay.
Or you go for the intrinsic perm, give it to everybody, and then create a tax on members of the Ku Klux Klan. Anyway,
Good job. Thank
offense.
you, policy. Very cool.
I mean, we do stuff like that. Not quite like that. Intrinsic perms are different. That's a severance perm, so.
Who says, oh my goodness, that's a great idea. I'm going to write this whole thing about how we have a counterplan and it's all of the app except for, the KKK because the KKK is bad, of course.
I'm going to show you some terrible
Never
affirmative.
Argue against that.
I'm going to show you some awful counterplans at the end of this lecture.
Oh my
That's gonna
gosh.
be, you saw the Mars
We're-
app, the space app from last
That
year.
was just bad. All right.
Stop. What
No,
was that?
no offense to Corey Lane. Your app is good, but somebody ran it terribly. All right. Offense
Did I
against.
watch this?
You did.
Ah!
The space.
All right. Offense against a pick. You can find some way that doing the AF without the bit that they picked out of is actually like really bad. Like it'll cause something bad. And then perms, generally don't try with these kinds of arguments. All right.
So wait. So would it be easy to do the counterplan for this if you did it wrong?
What do you mean?
Because if we said, okay, so the pick says that we should do part of the app. And so, yes, we should do, oh, I see.
It's not all of the AF,
I
it's
see.
severance.
I see.
Yeah, I see those brain juices swirling around.
Sir.
Okay.
Ah,
You're picking up. Get it?
pick up what you are putting down.
Picking up.
Oh no.
All right. Okay. Agent actor counterplans. You wouldn't call this a pick usually. Some people would. But it's in the broad category of counterplans that include most or all of the app. And in some sense, this is a pick out of an agent. If you say, we're going to have the US Congress do the AF, and it will be implemented by the Patent and Trade Office, trademark, maybe the agent counterplan picks out of the use of that agency and then uses the Securities and Exchange Commission. I don't know how that would work, but so these change who carries out the plan. The state's counterplan is big on last year's topic, not the IPR topic. It might come up, but it won't be nearly as big. This is an agent actor counterplan. It is a new actor carrying out the same plan if you have the states do it instead of the federal government. These are usually theoretically legitimate, but can anybody think of some reasons why they might not be?
Because the states probably weren't all in that.
States counterplan uniquely, yes. That it's an example of what's called utopian fiat, where you're fiating something that just is so unrealistic that we shouldn't even be putting it forward as an option. Like it's stupid to debate about that because it's not even something we can realistically advocate for. Yes, Avery.
What if it was too big for the states to implement? Like states automatically don't have the funding.
That's not a theory issue. That's a solvency issue.
Okay.
Yes, Gage.
Might be theoretically illegitimate because it's dodging the core topic controversies because it could make the debate about the 10th Amendment instead of the resolution.
Yeah, who controls it?
Yeah. So instead of debating about, but one of the core topic controversies is who ought to do IPR protection.
Well,
So, these are often very good for education. Debating about the particular government agencies that are going to carry out a plan and why they ought to do so forces you to learn a lot about how the government works, which makes debaters very good at understanding how the government works, and that's good.
You just debated about how a debate is good. You just said,
These are the theory elements.
aha!
Here's another reason why this is theoretically legitimate. If they have a Solvency Act saying that instead of Congress, the U.S. Patent and Trade Office ought to do this AF, then that means that there is research out there saying that the Patent and Trade Office ought to do certain ideas. So that means that the literature-based checks, so it prevents these arguments from getting too unrealistic and keeps them within this realm of realistic and educational argumentation. Sometimes these are theoretically questionable, like the states counterplan. It's not represented in the literature. Nobody is out there saying that all the states collectively ought to implement one particular policy in the same way. That's not happening. Some people say that particular states should do certain things, but that's a little different. And then, okay, stop. S, solvency. You're going to be like, our agency is actually really important. Like, doing it how we do it is pretty crucial. T, theory, we just went through that. If it's like the state's counterplan, maybe they shouldn't be allowed to do that. I think the state's counterplan is illegitimate, but I'm a 2A. So, yeah. If it's offense, there's a reason. Yeah, go for it.
The agent that the counterplan specifies is bad.
Yeah, it's a bad agent, or doing it for this AF is bad. And then perms, these are big. Sometimes perm do the counterplan wins. If you state that the United States federal government also refers to the states, the states counterplan works.
Yeah. States.
On the LD topic, if it says the United States ought to require that workers receive a living wage, then somebody reads the states counterplan, then yeah, perm do the counterplan. Yes, it does. So you would say that the United States can refer to the federal government or to the states as a collective, which would mean that the perm do the counterplan is a viable strat there. The perm do both sometimes works pretty well. Have the agencies collaborate on doing this, or have them both implement it, which might be a little stupid. And yeah, perm do the counterplan is pretty big. If you say the United States federal government should do this, and they're like, who does it? The United States federal government. And then they're like, well, let's have this other agency of the United States federal government do it. Then that's an instance of the United States federal government doing the AF, which is an instance of the plan text. Okay. I'm a 2A, so this is going to have me fuming with rage.
I love process counterplans.
I hate you.
Process
I love
counterplan.
process
He
counterplans.
Process.
loves them.
I don't know what a
So-
counterplan is.
The sense in which this is picking out of something is it is picking out of the word should or enact. I want you to let that sink in. These are competitive because of the word should. Isn't that gross?
No.
Sometimes these are functionally competitive, but we're going to talk about those in a second.
Like, isn't agent the same because it's competitive because of the word United States?
It's like the whole process.
In some sense, yes. But like the word should is worse.
These are silly.
All right, process counterplans. These change the process of enacting the plan. A big one, veto Cheeto, which is that whatever the AF is, we should have the normal means process of enact. Okay. In policy specifically, you'll end up with these debates where people will ask, how does the plan get enacted? And the AF will answer, normal means. That just means whatever the normal way is. That is not very good ground for competition because that is very vague. It's very hard for the negative to be like, normal means this, because that is not a term. And that means that doing this is competitive. But sometimes they'll be like, normal means is passing the plan through Congress and the president signs it. And then any other way that we do it is not normal means. And if the AF tries to use any other way, what kind of perm is that?
Severance.
Severance.
Oh, I knew it.
Because they have severed out of their use of normal means.
So like the
So-
court curbing counterplan, that would be it.
Yeah, courts counterplans,
So pretty.
veto Cheeto. So veto Cheeto is have Congress pass the plan, then have the president veto it, and then have Congress override the veto. So
What? Why would you do that?
a couple of reasons. It can avoid a politics dissent. If you're saying it's really costly for the president to advocate for, say, a universal basic income, that costs him a lot of political capital, which means that the rest of his agenda won't be passed. If you instead put this counterplan forward, where you're like, have Congress do it and then override the president's veto, so the president doesn't expend any political capital on this. In fact, the president tries to stop it. But it passes anyway. And now the president can also pass their agenda because they haven't lost any of their political capital.
Okay.
So if we're reading an agenda politics disad as an external net benefit, then the veto Cheeto counterplan would be a way to around that.
Yeah.
Another benefit of this might be that it's good for Congress to override the president's veto. Maybe that's an internal net benefit that Congress ought to override the president sometimes. We got to check executive authority. And this would be a way to do that. Consult. We're going to consult some group about the plan and then go forward with what they say. So oftentimes you're consulting maybe another country or a group of representatives from indigenous groups or a group of experts or the World Economic Forum. I don't know, some group. Recommend. This one is, anyway, recommend counterplans. Fiat that some group recommends to the actor of the plan that they do the plan. So on the LD topic right now, the US AFL-CIO, so it's a big union, ought to recommend that the federal government require that workers receive a living wage. They're going to read some evidence that this would result in a living wage, that they would listen. And then they're going to read some evidence that it's good to have unions have this kind of bargaining power and influence.
Cool.
That is an internal or external net benefit, Avery.
Repeat all of what you just said.
So if I have the union recommend counterplan, where a group of unions recommends to the federal government that they do the living wage act,
Yes.
and then the internal or external net benefit is that it legitimizes unions and gives them more influence in society. Is that internal or external?
That's internal.
Why?
Because it's internal.
Because it is a direct result of the counterplan.
Yes.
Yeah. Some other ones. Threaten. This is threaten some group with the implementation of the plan.
Does this get theory straight?
Oh, yeah. We're going to talk about theoretical objections to these.
Okay.
This is like threaten Saudi Arabia that will provide a basic income if they don't stop killing journalists or something.
Wait, hold. Wait.
That's Argentina.
These generally,
Wait, we're gonna threaten Saudi Arabia that we will provide a basic income if they don't stop killing journalists?
A living
Yeah.
wage?
or
Wait.
And then the kind of the inverse of that is a quid pro quo counterplan. Let's say Saudi Arabia really wants us to provide a living wage to workers. We're going to say, and we want them to stop killing journalists. We're going to say, hey, Saudi Arabia, let's make a deal. We will do the living wage AF if you stop killing journalists. This is a quid pro quo counterplan. You are doing the AF as part of an exchange with some other entity so that you can get this extra thing that you wanted.
Okay.
So now what are you debating about?
But threaten.
You're debating about Saudi Arabia killing journalists and not the living wage, right?
Oh no.
So we're no longer debating about the AF or the topic. These are stupid. Delay. these are really, really bad. These are just so unbelievably illegitimate.
So just
Do the
stop.
AF later.
Do it later, because these reasons.
You could just do from
Um,
the counterplan, right?
Condition the passage of the AF on something that we want to happen. So say, we will pass the AF if and only if Kamala Harris wins the 2024 election. And then if you say, the American people really want the AF, this will make sure that they make Harris the president. Then you've got this little internal net benefit of Harris becomes more likely to become president. So I can tell from the fact that you are laughing at some of these that you buy why they might be theoretically questionable. So the first reason is that these are extraordinarily difficult to answer without theory or sometimes permutations. It's really hard to say no to, we should consult indigenous people about the plan. They'll probably say yes, and then we'll do it. When you are just saying we should do the plan, you either have to impact turn the benefit of consulting indigenous peoples. You have to say that's bad. So that's called impact turning the internal net benefit. So maybe with the unions counterplan, you are going to impact turn that unions are good. You're going to say, no, it's really bad if unions have more influence in society. Or on the QPQ counterplan, no, it's really bad if Saudi Arabia stops killing journalists. Do you see where this kind of gets you? You have to impact turn absurdly, like, just make really ridiculous impact turns, because oftentimes internal net benefits are tiny and just objectively good.
So I'm going against someone at LD at Mustang. Are they going to read this to me?
No.
Are they going to say, oh my gosh, you know, your process counterplan, that's theoretically questionable. And did you know that?
Are you going to read a process counterplan in LD at
like,
Beehive?
If I walk in there and I do this, are they going to, like, this is like, I want you to give me like my chances of walking in there and they say, actually, that's theoretically questionable. If I were to do a process counterplan, chances, just go. Just give me a number.
They won't know how to articulate it as theory. They'll say, you shouldn't be allowed to do that. And they'll probably give you a reason because they're really obvious. 50.
So don't run this.
Don't.
Thank you.
Not
That's
until you're
all
in
I wanted to know.
until you're in national circuit policy. I've run condition, I've run consult. I may have read delay once. I've read and gone for consult quite a few times. Don't find it on my wiki. I don't know. Okay. These are hard to answer. Another reason they're hard to answer is it is very, very, very difficult to write an advantage that is not solved by doing the AF a different way. Please don't. So the only way to get an advantage that isn't solved by doing the plan through a different process is by having an advantage to the specific process through which you do the affirmative.
Oh.
That's really stupid.
That is.
Like, you can't have the Congress passes the bill advantage. You have the bill happens advantage. Some advantages you might be able to do that process counterplans won't solve as well are like economic certainty. You want businesses to know that your plan is happening. It's happening now. It's happening exactly how we're saying it is, instead of it may or may not happen depending on if this group says yes, and the specific mechanics and details of the implementation are subject to this group and their timeline and their whatever they want, which might make the economy mad about that, because businesses like certainty because they like to invest when they know what's going to happen.
Yes.
These completely destroy topic education. We stopped debating about the topic, and now we're debating about whether we ought to consult some group, or whether we ought to trade the AF for something, or whether we should do the AF by having Congress and the president sign it, or whether we should have Congress override the veto. Like, it's really stupid. It's stupid. Yeah.
So
Oftentimes, the only offensive option is to impact turn the internal net benefit.
okay, because it's stupid. Don't run it. Know how to run against it.
No, you should be able to read these. But they are so unbelievably useful if you have like a politics disad and the court's counterplan. It's so helpful sometimes, especially against small AFs or AFs you're not prepared for. Stop. S, solvency. A big one is that the reason process counterplans don't immediately lose to perm do the counterplan is that their implementation is not certain, and the word should means certain. So because none of these counterplans has a 100% probability of result AF, except delay, then any percent probability that they don't result in the F is a solvency deficit. There is, like, say, a 10% risk that we consult unions and they say no to the living wage F. Well, that's 10% risk of no solvency. Yeah. Theory we just went through. You can say this kind of counterplan is bad. Offense, impact turn the internal net benefit. It's hard, but you know. Also back on the solvency, these time frame and economic certainty advantages are big ones that you can say that the counterplan won't solve. Yeah. Permutations. So theory and perms are your best strats against a process counterplan most of the time. You're going to say like perm to the counterplan.
For delay.
Delay is, you're going to say perm to the counterplan because it is do the F and wait. That is plan plus. It is do the plan plus this waiting thing.
Easy as that.
Yeah.
And then consult. It's do the plan plus consult these people.
That's a perm do both. But you're going to say that like should does not mean certain, and they're still advocating that we should do the F.
Wouldn't it be plan plus?
No, because
how?
They might not result. It's actually a pick. It's a pick out of the word should, because it is a pick out of the certainty and the process that the F has in enacting itself.
I see. Okay.
So consult counterplans. Like one thing that you can do is this like perm do both. We're going to do the F. We're also going to consult this group about the implementation of it. But we're not going to really go along with what they say. We're going to do it regardless. And we're going to hope they say yes and that they don't notice.
Yeah.
Like this is something you could say is perm do both, consult this group, ignore them and do the F. Most of the time it'll solve. It might even be better because if that group says no, then the counterplan is stuck in this world where we don't do the F and all of the F's advantages, their impact scenarios happen.
Okay.
The last type of permutation I want to go over that's super useful against the process counterplan is the intrinsic perm. This is where we add something that was neither in the AF nor the counterplan. So with process counterplans, when we're doing an intrinsic perm, let's say it is consult unions to increase their legitimacy. We could consult unions about something else. That's the intrinsic perm. Find something else, consult unions about it. It legitimizes unions. It guarantees that we do the AF, so we don't have that solvency risk of not ending up doing the affirmative. Why is this justified?
You lost me.
So one of the main reasons why we should be allowed to do intrinsic perms against process counterplans is all of our theory reasons. All of our theoretical objections to process counterplans can be construed as reasons why we ought to have the intrinsic perm as an option. So these are very useful against counterplans, or against process counterplans, because you can say, do that process for something else, and it ends up accessing the internal net benefit. So this is an example of a process counterplan. This is the Chevron counterplan. This is the Loper v. Raimondo is this court case that was being decided at the time. It has now been decided. And my uniqueness argument was right. Anyway. Okay, so they're saying that the Chevron doctrine is this idea that courts ought to defer to executive agencies' interpretations of laws when making decisions regarding those interpretations. So in lawsuits, they should say, we'll defer to executive agencies' expertise on this. It's really important because it prevents companies from just being able to sue their way out of any number of cooperating with all sorts of regulations. So they're saying that we should have all relevant executive agencies should interpret statutes as requiring a federal jobs guarantee. This comes out of nowhere, and that the court ought to rule that that's okay. So this internal net benefit is Chevron deference. It says that it solves Chevron deference. It means that we do end up, it revitalizes that standard. It means we do comply. So the big thing here is that they do not have a solvency advocate specifically about doing fiscal redistribution via having executive agencies interpret the law as requiring that they do the act and having the courts uphold that.
Okay.
They do not have a solvency advocate that says that we should do a federal jobs guarantee. They don't. So there's no specific reason why we have to do this for a federal jobs guarantee, which is a great reason why we should do it for a minimum wage, or for legalizing marijuana, or for prison reform. Any number of intrinsic terms you can read. Whereas if they do have a solvency advocate that says specifically for your act, this is the process by which we should enact it, the intrinsic term is going to lose because it doesn't have access to this solvency advocate that says why this is the way that we should uniquely do this policy. So essentially, if they've done their research and it's a good process counterplan, like we should really be debating about this process when it comes to this act, the intrinsic term loses. But if they haven't, the intrinsic term wins, and the AF doesn't have to debate this impossible to debate, but also really stupid argument. They're bad in other contexts because we discussed this earlier. They shift the focus of the debate away from the AF and the counterplan and towards whatever new thing the AF would like to add. All right, we're going to talk a little bit about textual competition here.
Are you still recording, by the way?
We'll just look at this one. I'm going to cut everything in between this. Okay. This is an example of an increase pick. It picks out of a particular word in the affirmative. They're repealing local content requirements. Doesn't even matter what these things are, but it's something they think is bad and that they think is a form of fiscal redistribution. So they're going to read a counterplan, sorry, that does the AF, but gets rid of some other fiscal redistribution that they think is bad. They're going to say that the perm do the counterplan doesn't work because increase means on net. So if you do both of these things together, you are net decreasing fiscal redistribution. You're not. That's a lie. But anyway, so this is an example of a word pick. So the functions of this counterplan are that it implements the affirmative and repeals local content requirements. Those are the things that it does. And from a functional basis, this includes the affirmative because it includes the federal jobs guarantee, which is the AF in this round. So perm do the counterplan should be like a TKO right here, right? Like it includes the AF. They write a counterplan that includes the AF.
Yeah.
The reason that they think it doesn't and that people would go for this argument is this thing called textual competition. They think that when you read a plan text that says the USFG should increase fiscal redistribution by blah, you are doing increase. If you then do a permutation that reduces fiscal redistribution on net by eliminating local content requirements, which they think are a form of fiscal redistribution, then they would say that the perm net decreases fiscal redistribution. That is severance. How is it severance?
So
it's severance out of a word. Not out of a function, but out of a word.
increase.
It is severing the word increase. When they do the permutation, they would be severing the part of their AF where they net increase fiscal redistribution, in theory at least.
Yes.
How many off did they read?
In this round, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 11 off.
Wow.
Almost all of them are counterplans. This was a new F that someone broke.
Are they good at spreading?
They're
Okay, how many
they're very
pages is that?
fast.
That like 40.
This is 40
almost
pages.
Wow.
This is a 40-page 1NC.
Can we watch our next round of policy?
You don't want to watch Nats. Nats is boring.
I want to watch.
I feel like Will and Henry could have beat the teams from 2023 nationals.
No, let's not get into it. Anyway, so this is a word pick. It is saying that the perm net decreases fiscal redistribution, which is severing out of that bit where they said they increase fiscal redistribution. These are stupid. Textual competition is a bad standard. It is essentially saying that a counterplan is competitive if you can't combine the words of the counterplan and the words of the affirmative and get something kind of coherent out of it. Or if you attempt to combine the counterplan and the app, you are losing a word that you included. These are stupid. This is a bad model. At least alone, it's a terrible model. But people go for it. You should be aware of it. That's about all I got.